Before I got hired as a writer, I was doing stand-up in New York. I had just headlined my first club ever. I was only able to headline because I was on that show, Best Week Ever. You remember that? We'd be in front of colored pieces of paper. I remember this girl didn't want to talk to me at a bar, and I was on the L train home, and I was like, well, at least I'm on TV tonight. I don't know if that's a good attitude in life to have. It was the summer of 2008. I got a call from what was then called Endeavor, now called WME. Saturday Night Live is having their studio tests on Thursday. They would like you to audition. This was August 5th, Tuesday. August 7th was Thursday. I said, yes, okay. I remember thinking, I'm not going to get it, but I'll go and I'll do my favorite, 4 minutes of stand-up. So we auditioned downstairs in what was Conan's studio on 6. And I saw Lorne Michaels right away. He was in the hallway and he was on the phone. I went into the waiting room of everyone waiting to audition. It was Nick Kroll, T.J. Miller, Ellie Kemper, Donald Glover, Bobby Moynihan.
It smells like pepper up in here.
Guess who got it? Everyone had been saying they don't laugh. So I went out and I did 4 minutes and I heard laughing.
Here are some of my favorite people that appear on Law and Order. Upset? Nah. She was smiling. Guy she was with didn't look too happy though. Thank you very much.
I went home that weekend to Chicago, and I was at a restaurant, and a 212 number called. But I told my mom to shut up, and I picked it up, and it was Seth Meyers, and he said, "We want to offer you a writing job on the show." I said, "Yes." He goes, "I want to be clear. This is not the cast." And I was like, "I want to be clear. I would never think I'd be in the cast." Sometimes you're hired here, and you won't meet Lorne for months, sometimes a year. Bobby Moynihan was hired as the cast. I was the only writer hired. And I was in Steve Higgins' office. So Steve said, "Hey, Lorne's here. He wants to talk to you." I remember I was in an orange t-shirt and I said, "Am I underdressed?" And Steve said, "No." And I walked down the hall and I went in. I said, "Hi," and he said, "Hi." He said, "You're from Chicago?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Now you're here." And he said, "And your family's in Chicago?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm the third of 4. I have 2 older sibling," and he said, "I know everything about you." I think he meant, "I have met your kind many times." The first show week was the first time that Tina Fey played Sarah Palin.
It's Saturday night!
That show was hosted by Michael Phelps. And I was walking out of pitch, and Andy Samberg was like, I want to do that Mark Spitz thing. And I was like, yeah. It was a Mark Spitz talk show. I said, I thought maybe his band leader could be Elliot Spitzer and the Schizophrenics, and Bill Hader walked up and was like, I do Elliot Spitzer. This sounds like a movie where people meet too easily. I was really scared that writing night, but I'd never laughed so hard in my life writing with them. Then I went back to Greenpoint, Brooklyn at 5 in the morning, and I woke up at 1, and the read-through was at 3. I took a taxi, because I was like, I gotta get there on time, and then the bridge between Greenpoint and Long Island City went up. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be late. I got into Midtown, it was 2:50. Read-through starts at 3. I got out of the taxi and I sprinted down Fifth Avenue. I got there and I said, am I late? And they said, Lorne's not here, and read-through probably won't start for another 2 hours. That was the beginning of a new relationship with time.
Activia testimonial, take 1.
My first season was really fun because Simon Rich and America Sawyer and I worked together a lot. I was lucky to have a lot of stuff in the show, so I was around Lorne a good deal. And then I went to Chicago that summer to scout for people to be on the show. This trip, by the way, was very flattering to be asked to be on. We did not fly regular airline. That was like being in a car in the sky, and everyone was acting like it was normal. We were flying into Chicago, and I was looking at the skyline. Steve Higgins started narrating what I was thinking, which was, you mother you said I wouldn't be nothing, and now I'm landing in a private plane. You ass, look at me now, I'm with Lorne Michaels. Going to Chicago, where I am from, where I lived, in the city, not far from Wrigley Field, with Lorne, it was like I was going to Chicago for the first time. We went to a Cubs game. We get into Wrigley Field and Lorne goes, let's get hats. And we go and we all buy Cubs hats. He bought me a Cubs hat, which I still have. Then the second season was exciting. It was still just exciting to be a writer. And then Lorne came up to me and he said, I want you to do something on Update. Right before I went out there, Lorne walked up to me and went, look in the lens and let your face relax.
Here now with a special editorial on the subject is one of our writers, John Mulaney.
Thank you.
I always felt he enjoyed the work I was doing, and there was a point where I had been here like 3.5, 4 years, and I was getting a little cranky. I remember we had this sketch called The Kissing Family, and we had one set at an airport. I was mad about something that week. We were in the meeting on Tuesday, and I said, we're working on A Kissing Family with Bill and Fred. And he goes, where's it set? I was like, they're saying goodbye at an airport. And he said, you can't have it at the airport. They have the ropes, the velvet ropes, and I don't think he was describing a commercial airport. And I said, where do you want me to set it? I'll set it wherever you want it. And he was like, it can be an airport. I go, just tell me where you want it set, and I'll put it in there. Anywhere, it's The Kissing Family. It can go anywhere. And I was a young man. I didn't know how to deal with anger. So what he would do is he would tell me a story. In the story was the lesson you were supposed to know. There was a Christmas tree lighting. So he walks up to Simon and I. We were like, Johnny Carson used to be on the 6th floor? And he said, yeah. And then he moved to LA, and Ed McMahon, of course, suddenly wants a new deal. So he signs with the William Morris agency. Ed's agents call Johnny Carson. They go, he wants a higher salary and to have a higher title on the show. Johnny Carson says, fine, we'll find a different announcer. Ed McMahon freaked out. He had to call Johnny Carson and apologize. Because it's that thing of when you have a personal relationship with someone and then representatives get involved, and then that person doesn't really want to deal with you. And he walked away, and Simon went, that story was not about Johnny Carson. I had some opportunities outside the show. I don't know. I was getting really exhausted. I left after 4 full years. My last episode was Kristen Wiig's last episode, and it was Andy's last episode. And it was my last episode, but no one knew that because I didn't tell anyone. The last sketch, She's Like a Rainbow, and Ruby Tuesday played, and everyone danced with Wiig. I was standing right there. I was with my now wife. I remember just crying, really emotional, but not crying cathartic, crying like a maniac who's been awake for 4 years. I was scared. I was scared of what I was doing. I met with Lorne in July and said I wasn't going to return, but that I wanted to develop a show with him. And he said, that's great. I just need you for these weeks. And he pointed to all the weeks of the show. I think I needed to draw some line in the sand. Not that I was unhappy, but I've done a lot of work and it is time for me to move on, and therefore I do not work here.
At the beginning of the relationship, when it's going well, so you decide to meet each other's parents.
Mulaney, coming this fall.
I had a TV show that Lorne produced, but he won't tell you that. It had my name on it. Should have said Michael's. No, but it was called Mulaney, and it was canceled. Mulaney was canceled. The last episode of that show aired on Fox against the SNL 40th anniversary. I was at the SNL 40th, not watching my own show. Lorne asked me to come back and write the Q&A that Jerry Seinfeld did with the audience. There's a really nice thing about coming back and being a writer who is really excited to be in the studio. Sometimes people were like, I don't want to come back. And then those people would be there on Friday and Saturday. And then I was here to do a walk-on part in a Stefan.
He's an attorney named Shy. Shy?
Hi, Shy. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
I was wearing a latex shirt, and Lorne called me up to his office. Perfect timing. He and I were sitting there, and he said, I'd like you to host April. And I turned, and I looked at the board, and I went, what about Timothée Chalamet? And then I digested what he was saying. And so I was really terrified.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Mulaney!
Thank you very much. It is great to be here hosting Saturday Night Live. I was a writer here for 5 years, some of the best years of my life, and to be hosting here is just surreal. Stick around, we'll be right back.
The thing is, once you work here, you always work here. There's great comfort in being here, and there's great comfort in working for someone who you respect. This has been an extraordinary thing to be a part of, and I got to do a lot of stuff here with a lot of people I really loved and still am close to. It took about a year after leaving to be like, oh, 25 to 29, that was a wonderful period. I would say to those of you who work here who are watching this, which I don't know how many people would, stay 1 year longer than you think you should. Was all that unusable?